Welcome to the CodPast podcast, where your fishy past hooks your brilliant future. With Dr. Deborah, Laura, and Dr. Trish.
There we go. I know I always say it. We are live.
And we're going to go on the recording now. We're going to start to record, and then we will say yippee-yi-yay. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Facebook land. And we play the song or no?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Where's your speaker?
Hooks for a brilliant future.
No.
With Dr.
Okay.
Laura, and Dr. Trish.
Let's start it over.
We're going to start it. We're going to do one. We're going to do over.
Welcome to the CodPast podcast, where your fishy past hooks your brilliant future. With Dr. Deborah, Laura, and Dr. Trish.
Yay. All right. Okay, so we are here today to start our Friday afternoon clubhouse, FAC, Friday afternoon from my college days. And we've got an incredible interview today with an incredible human who has more stories than all of us combined. And John Eslinger will be talking to us as he is right now in his chair in Tucson. But before we get started with our interview, do we have a fishy past joke? So why do we call this CodPast, Deborah?
We call it the CodPast podcast because we feel that our fishy past hooks our brilliant future. And the cod is a very significant fish in the world. It saved the world, actually, one day. There's a book called How the Cod Saved the World. So thank cod, we're alive.
That's really good. And Laura, do you have a fishy joke?
You know, I have to say, I have been running behind all week, but I wasn't running behind. I was only like 2 minutes behind, and I found one and I like it. It's really cute. See him?
Yeah.
So how do you become an entrepreneur in the ocean?
Say that again. Say that again.
How do you become an entrepreneur in the ocean?
Oh, that's easy. Go to fish school?
Close. John, you have any guesses on that one?
No, not even one.
You start on a small scale.
Oh,
Ooh. Isn't that cute?
Ooh.
that's a good
Yay.
one.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay,
Ooh,
Deborah, do you have a joke for us?
Which fish has the worst haircut?
Tuna.
That's good. That's a good guess.
Barracuda? No,
I'll
that's
give
good.
you. I'll give you a guess. Party in the front, back. Business in the front. A mullet, right? Business in the front, party in the back.
Oh, I didn't know that's so cute.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. We're just a laugh a minute. Well, I want to introduce our guest. It's my incredible pleasure. I was introduced to John years ago by my girlfriend, who has the biggest dating company in Arizona called Spies, because she used to be a naval spy. And she wanted me to meet John forever. And John is legendary. John is the another 3-year term commander of the largest fleet in the world of downed aircraft that they've taken out of commission for this moment. Some of them go back up, but they bring them into Tucson because of the temperature of the outside, and it preserves the planes and preserves parts of planes and things. And John, when I met him, I think he just maybe became commander of that fleet in the very beginning, but I was so mesmerized by him. And my girlfriend kept saying, John is one of the most fascinating people I've ever known in my life. You guys are going to love each other. We're going to be best friends. Well, then Laura and I have a group called the Bohemians. And the Bohemians went down to the Boneyard, and we got a private tour. You don't even really get tours like that. But John took us through all kinds of stuff, told us all kinds of secret stories. We got to meet some of the top pilots down there. We had lunch with these amazing people. I mean, it was really an amazing day. And so I fell in love with John even before that. But each time I meet John, he's like a bunch of other things. But I think we also need to salute John and say thank you, God, for bringing John to the planet, because John was a secret mercenary in Vietnam. And he saw some of the hardest, worst things as a veteran. And we owe all that we have today to people that are willing to put their life right on the front line, risk and more, because what he did, nobody else did there. And because nobody could do it, because John to this day has some records that we're going to talk about, that he's known throughout the world for doing some stuff that nobody else can even explain. And so it's pretty fascinating as we get to see some of our history. But John is one of the reasons that that we have this great country to live in. And for the last couple of weeks, we have really been in heavy prayer to put a blanket of spirit protection on the United States, because we know that many, many countries depend on the United States and its benevolence. You know, we are the most charitable country. We're the most innovative country, and we have a lot of problems to fix for sure. But nobody wants anything bad to happen in the United States, because it will have an effect worldwide. So we've just really been using prayer, because sometimes when you don't know what else to do, you just start praying and you see things the way you want to see them, not the disaster. And so, I don't know, John, I probably only barely earmarked your history there, but did I get it right?
Say that again.
I probably only barely got to any of your history.
Well,
did I do it right?
yeah, you hit a small part of it, but that's a pretty intense part. And then thing that's exciting for me, is still happening. And I'm pushing 80 years old, but I ain't giving up. I may give out.
Well, I know you're working on some films right now, and I know some people are wanting to document your life, because it is so fascinating. I mean, it's pretty interesting that we get to talk to you right now when Top Gun has just broken every record on the planet, and everybody really likes it. I actually watched Tom Cruise take another actor on a jet ride about, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that, and scared the bejesus out of the other actor. But they had real cameras in there and everything on one of the two-seater jets. And apparently he's pretty good, you know. But I thought you must be getting a kick out of all this jet pilot, you know, fighter pilot stuff, and that's who you are.
Well, you know, I started off in the Oklahoma Panhandle when I was 5 years old, and we lived across the street from what was called a civilian pilot training base. And all the local pilots were learning how to fly there. And then as soon as they got finished, they got drafted into the military. So I used to sit across the street and watch these guys getting these little airplanes to go out and fly. And I knew then I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Well, that didn't work out. I flunked the draft physical so bad they wouldn't even take me as a cook. But I decided I'm not going to let that get in my way. So what I did is I don't want to sound like a complainer, but by American standards, I came from a really poor family. And so it was up to me to decide how I'm going to do this. And so what I wound up doing is I wound up having 5 different jobs. I had 3 paper routes. I worked in a grocery store and I worked in a filling station. And I used all that money to buy my flying lessons. And I never hesitated. I just knew. But I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there because I lived in the Oklahoma Panhandle and there was nothing there. But I signed up to go on a trip to Kansas with one of my mother's friends who was from the same town she was in. Make a long story not very long. This guy left me stranded in Wichita, Kansas, and I had just turned 20 with $1.11. No place to stay. Just had my car. It was 26 degrees outside. It was January the 3rd, 1966. So I was really depressed. You know, it's like, what's going to happen to me? Well, it occurred to me, I'm stuck in Wichita, Kansas, the air capital of the world. So through a twist of fate, I found a place to stay. Next morning, I got up. My mom said, hey, go to the Western Union. And she says, I'll send you some money and you come home. So I'm driving to Western Union and I'm looking around and here's Boeing aircraft on my left. They built B-52s there and they were sitting everywhere. And I was almost to have a coronary because I'm sitting in the middle of all these B-52s. I drove down the road a mile and there was Cessna aircraft and something in my gut says, hey, Eslinger, you love airplanes. Why don't you drop into Cessna there? Maybe they'll hire you. So I dropped in, talked to the guy, and the guy goes, hey, man, we like the fact that you like airplanes, but don't call us and we won't call you. Well, I was leaving town and some said go to Beechcraft. Well, Beechcraft then and now is still one of the premier aircraft manufacturers on the planet. And it's something in my guts going, yeah, you better go see them. And the other thing, the little dude on the left-hand side with the pitchfork was going, man, if Boy and Cessna want to talk to you, they won't even let you in the parking lot. So I get to Beechcraft and this guy goes, so what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a pilot and a mechanic in the flight department. He goes, so does everybody else.
Oh.
He said, would you take a job in the factory? I said, I'll be there in the morning. What time do I start? And so I did. I spent 9 months in that department. And as soon as my probation was up, I started hustling the director of maintenance in the flight test department. And he told me, he said, hey, keep coming over and talk to me. You know, one of these days we may have an opening. So 11 months went by, and every Thursday at lunch, I was sitting in front of his desk. And man, I'd walk in and you could just say, what the heck is he doing? So finally one day the phone rang and my boss in the factory said, hey, Mr. Rice wants to see you. I go over there and I sit down in front of his desk and he goes, well, we have an opening for you. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a pilot and a mechanic. And he goes, can you drive a truck? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, you're going to be driving our gas truck. And I'm thinking, well, crap. And then it occurred to me, hey, here I am. I'm in the flight department. I'm going to get to know the test pilots. I'm going to get to know the customers, and I'm going to get to fly with the test pilots. And what happened is I converted that into just a total motivational thing. And then one day I got a call and they said, hey, we need a crew chief for the RU-21Js. Well, at the time, that was a secret airplane and there was only 5 of them. So I signed up for that and I was getting briefed on that. And then they had a layoff. And since I was a union member, much against to my chagrin, because I knew how that worked, I got laid off, and it really upset me. Well, I got laid off on a Tuesday, and on a Thursday, I got a phone call, and this guy goes, "Hey, I understand you have some knowledge of Operation Laughing Eagle." And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about," because it was a secret code. And he said, "That's the right answer. Meet me for lunch." So I met him for lunch on Friday, and on Tuesday morning, I was on my way to Vietnam, and the rest is history. 3 days, and man,
Wow.
I left Wichita, Kansas at 8 o'clock in the morning one morning, and 24 hours later, I was getting off the airplane in the middle of a war in Vietnam. And, it's like, wow, how did I get here? And that's when my life and career really started happening. And I still contend I'm the second luckiest guy in the world.
Who's the luckiest?
I don't want to know, because I'd be envious. but while I was at Beach, I was just pumping gas, but I knew all these people. I saw all the marketing people, and I did some serious hustling. And one of the things that I did, that I went in and I got to know the guy in the public affairs, and because I always liked airplanes, and something just hit me in the gut that, I started looking around, and there's no beach history anywhere. And Olivan Beach and Walter Beach, they were from the 30s. And of course, by the time I got there in the 60s, he was gone and she was about to retire. They didn't have any history anywhere. So I got to thinking about that. And I went to the public affairs department, and I mentioned to the director of public affairs, I sure would like to do some kind of compilation of beach history. And it was approved by Mrs. Beach. She gave me a $5,000 budget, which blew everybody's mind, because she was the cheapest person in the airplane business. And so I started working on this documentary for Beach Aircraft, and I wound up doing 5 volumes. And when I got finished with them, it took me 5 years. I got to know everybody. I met Frank Sinatra. I met Nancy Sinatra. I met Hoss Cartwright through all this, and a whole list of other people. And I just knew that somehow or other, my life ain't going to be dull, and it hasn't been. And you guys popped into it, and you guys added some stuff to it that really has enhanced my bragging rights for just being here.
Don't tell anybody our secrets, John. You said you're good at keeping secrets.
Oh, trust me, I won't tell anybody. And if I sell out, I'll sell out enough for all of us to retire. So
that's cute. Well, tell us just a little tiny bit, because of Tom Cruise this week. Tell us why they used you as a mercenary, and what was something that as a mercenary you had to get used to doing.
Well, what happened during the Vietnam War? They started all the peace talks in Paris, and I was assigned to a special project at Beach on these secret airplanes, and so like I said, I got laid off. This guy calls me. The next thing I know, I'm in Vietnam, and those airplanes wound up, nobody knew about them for decades. But in the meantime, something just caused me to start writing down where I've been and what I've done, because I want to remember that. But more than anything, I want to pass it on to my grandson. And I have an awesome grandson, and he's going to be the only grandson I have. And so but I also get to teach at Pima College as an adjunct instructor. So several times a month, I wind up in front of 20 young aircraft pilot students and mechanics. And it's almost embarrassing when they introduce me because, you know, they're going through my resume and I'm sitting there going, yeah, man, I can't believe I did that. And every time when the class is over and my presentation's over, these young people come up and say, man, I want to know how you did that. And so I've been able to pass it along. Some of my former students have done incredible things. And so it just takes me back to how lucky can the guy be? And I, you know, like I mentioned before, I live in a world of gratitude, and I had a physical defect that didn't allow me to get drafted. And at first I was really upset. And then one day the phone rang and I went down and applied for this gig, and they sent me over to the base in McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, and they did a complete physical on me before they sent me to Vietnam, and I had got out of Vietnam because of a physical. So, you know, I was living in kind of a duplicitous world. And I just keep on doing it. I don't know what else to say.
John, we've been sort of toying with the idea, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm curious to see what you think of this. When you say yes to opportunity, because the door of opportunity or the window of opportunity is so small, it sounds to me like you just kept saying yes, yes, and you just put your work and repetition and yes, yes, yes. Do you think that has a big part of it, or is there something else that we're missing?
No, that's a good point. And I this reflects back onto my character, and I've had a lot of counseling. I'm still in PTSD counseling because of Vietnam, but it's allowed me to evolve in the way I think and helps take care of some of the problems. But and I was just visiting with my shrink day before yesterday, and he told me, and he specializes in PTSD. He told me, he goes, you're the only civilian I've ever had. He said, I have a lot of military guys, especially with the Air Force here. And he goes, don't take this wrong. He said, but now that I know your history, he said, man, you got to be one of the craziest sumbitches I ever met. And I said, I consider that a vote of confidence. And
John, so talking about that, would you just, don't scare us, but would you give us a little picture of what you would do as a mercenary? Tell us, like, you'd get in one of those little planes, and I know you could fit. That was one of the reasons that they chose you, right? You could fit in these secret planes. And then did you bomb things, or did you go survey them, or what were you doing?
Well, the thing that makes that really fascinating, as a non-combatant, we were considered not to be able to carry any weapons, which at first I was kind of nervous about that. But what I found out after I got there, because I'd be sitting in the hangar, and the pilot would come along and say, hey man, we need somebody to ride shotgun. And I'd hop in the gunner's nest on the right-hand side. I always preferred the right-hand side. And I'd hop in the gunner's nest with the gunner, and we'd go out, and they'd call us in a target, and we'd go out and take a look at that target and decide how it should be disposed of. And so I really got to do all the stuff I really wanted to do. And I was just sitting there. And legally, I wasn't able to carry a weapon. But when we were sitting in the gunner's nest, there wasn't anybody there to, make a note. And so I got to really live my fantasies of being a fighter pilot, even though it was in a helicopter. But afterwards, through an interesting twist of fate, I wound up getting to fly as a civilian in 31 different Air Force airplanes, including the F-111D Aardvark, which was it was designed during Vietnam, but it was it was really secret until toward the end. And I wound up getting to do an orientation flight in one of those. And I got to tell you, it was one of the coolest things I ever did. And I got to sit in the right seat. I spent 8 hours in the simulator learning all the things that the right seater had to do in the F-111. And then we went out after 3 days of training, and we did a 9-hour nuclear delivery practice mission. We flew up all the way to the Canadian border, and we had live nukes on board. And the word comes in, you get to the Canadian border, code comes in, you get the code, you keep going. And if you don't get the code, you make a right turn and go back to base. And we did all that at 400 feet at 400 miles an hour. And talk about an adrenaline rush. And I'm a druggie. I'm a confessed druggie. I do all the adrenaline I can do. And it's taken me places that I still can't believe I got to do it. So.
Yeah, that's, not just getting to yes or saying yes to everything, but I know that there have been experiences that you've had that are kind of magical. And I just witnessed one. I don't know if this number is important to you, but you got to Kansas, somewhere in Kansas, and had $1.11, and then you were on this secret thing with an F-111. So are you into magical numbers, or have you ever seen anything like that before?
No, I'm just into any number that'll work.
Touche, very good. Well, let me just ask you really quickly, because this is usually something we ask our guest, is have you experienced a ghost, angel, synchronicity, or UFO that you can discuss with us?
Well, I'm quite involved with, and I don't know if I've told you about this. I may have, but I'm quite involved with Roswell, New Mexico. I don't know if you've ever heard of Roswell. and I have clients over there that do interesting things. And the only problem with that is when I'm talking with people like you guys who are really interested in that stuff, I can't really tell you, except I've spent a lot of time in Area 51. I've spent a lot of time in White Sands Missile Range. I've observed things that I'm standing there going, wow. I just wish my dad could see me now, because he always told me I was going to be worthless and never amount to anything, literally. But I stand there and I can almost get emotional going, how in the world did this happen? So,
yeah.
And the whole deal is, when somebody wants something, I'll sign up. I mean,
you said it earlier, John. It's your character. You had your character ever since the moment you were born. You knew who and what you wanted to be when you were 5 years old. And your character said, I am something and I am somebody and I'm going to go get it. And you did it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because, I've always had some close classmates, but since I was kind of at the bottom of the social structure, a lot of those people wouldn't have anything to do with me, literally. And I got made fun of. I started my business career as a paper boy in high school when everybody else is working at the grocery store, and they're going, "Oh, you're a paper boy." Well, I met T. Boone Pickens's mother there, and she ran the draft board, and she's the reason I didn't get drafted. And I know that if I'd have got drafted, I would have never survived that. And that's a conversation when we're having several toddies. But I look back at all that and go, in spite of the crap I had to deal with growing up, man, this couldn't have turned out any better. And then that $1.11 thing, I just couldn't have planned it any better. So I encourage people when you're having adversity, don't let it get you down. And my motto is, and I don't want to sound verbose, but I'm just going to call a spade a shovel. Don't let the bastards get you down. And just remember one thing, they're all bastards. And
Catch of the day.
Catch of the day.
We have a catch of the day where we go, that's it.
Or we could call that row advice. Everything has a little bit of a fish connotation to it. So that was row advice on the catch of the day. I love that. Love that.
Yeah. So, and then I still get to play, an honorary commander, and one of the things I got to tell you is real quick. When I became an honorary commander, they always, and it's a very rare thing. There's only just like 12 a year out of the whole city of Tucson, and there's always 500 people apply. And I got selected, and so when I was being inducted, I was sitting on the front row waiting for this general to finish his speech, and I looked across the aisle, and there was a guy that I went to elementary school with in Texhoma, Oklahoma, 60 years ago. And I'm sitting there looking at him, going, what's he doing here? Well, it turns out his son was in the Air Force. I didn't even know it. And he wound up being the commander, the NCO, non-commissioned officer commander of my group. And there we were, sitting in the same room 60 years later. And I don't know what that means, but it really, when I showed up as an honorary with him there and his stroke, man, he made some amazing things happen for me, and I'll always be grateful. So you never know.
What was one of the favorite things that in your life? Like, was it? I know when you saw all those Boeing airplanes, it was like, yes, I'm here. But is there a favorite story or a favorite place you've been?
Well, I have a hard time answering that because I've been to over 70 countries, and every one of them, there's something interesting because when I travel, my cool, awesome Dr. Squeezy is my travel agent, and she researches every place I go. And so in Europe, man, I've dined with princes and princesses and princes, and I've been special guests in castles. But the coolest thing I think that ever happened to me, so far as outside of my kids, is I got to walk on the Great Wall of China. And I'm standing in the middle of that, looking both ways. I got so emotional.
Yeah.
And how lucky can you be? Plus, I got paid really good for being there. And yeah.
Well, one of the things, John, that a lot of people ask me is, Are people allowed to ever go tour that base of the mothballs of all the fleet there? And I know it's the biggest. You guys have 4,000 planes. Is that it?
Let's say that again.
How many planes are kept at the aerospace
Oh, the
group?
Boneyard? The
Yeah,
Boneyard?
Yeah.
4,000.
yeah. And then are people allowed to go see it?
Well, there's two ways to see it. The way you saw it with me, but that doesn't happen very often. The way you see it is you sign up with the Pima Air and Space Museum, and they have a deal with the Boneyard, and they allow a bus, and of course you got to go. You got to have a security pass, and they do vet your background because they don't let hardly anybody in that base. And so they put you on this bus and you just drive up and down and they point stuff out. Well, in my mind, that's like two potato chips at a family reunion, man. If I can't get in it and sit down and get my picture taken in, I don't want to be here. and I'm 10 minutes from that place. And when I go do my honorary commander things, and it's usually 3 or 4 times a month, I always leave the headquarters and drive over to the Boneyard and drive around and just look around. And there's still a couple of airplanes there I got to fly in the past. And of course, the sad part of that, they're destined to be chopped up because all the others that I flew there are already chopped up. But that's the way life is. And, you know, you can't keep everything that's near and dear to you, because if you did, we'd have to have warehouses the size of Oklahoma. So,
John, when we were there, that was such a cool experience. And I think it was really cool that you gave us, as the Bohemians, a very unique view of that. And then I know we did the Vatican telescope for you because you didn't have access to that. So I just love that. I love everything that we've been able to do together. But some of the stories you told were so cool. And one of them, I will not get this right, so I'm going to ask you to relay it, was about Mach 1 and what you experienced with Mach 1 versus Mach 2. Can you tell our audience about that?
well, you know, we always hear about breaking the speed of sound. And you know, the guy who was famous for that was a guy named Chuck Yeager. And because of an interesting twist of fate, I got to know Chuck Yeager on a personal basis. And he's one of my most unfavorite people in the world. He was totally egotistical, but I still respect the fact that he did what he did. But when I got to break Mach 1 the first time, it was almost disappointing, because we're cruising along there and we're 400 feet above the ground, and I'm watching the Mach meter, because you have an airspeed indicator and you have a Mach meter, and it gives you percentages of the Mach. And so you get up really close to about 700 miles an hour, and I'm sitting there, and he's letting me fly the airplane at 400 feet at 400 miles an hour. Of course, he's on the controls because, you know, one little hiccup and we'd be in the dirt. But he goes, okay. He says, let's go Mach 2. And I had to pull the throttle up over a detent into Mach 2. And the only thing that happened was it pushed me back in the seat. And I saw this little thing. And I'll never see it. I don't know how, again, but I don't know how to describe it. It was a thing. It goes boing, and it goes past my face. And I said, "What was that?" And he goes, "Every time you go Mach 1, man, that's all that pressure building up in the front, and then when you go through it, it has to go somewhere. Otherwise, it's like hitting a brick wall. It'll boing." And I think that's probably one of the highlights of flying Mach 1. And then, of course, we did Mach 2, and that, you know, Mach 2 is like, well, been there, done that. and
Don't you think that's almost like going into a different reality?
Yeah.
I mean, don't you think that's sort of like an ET kind of technology where you're just in a different reality? We've kind of talked about philosophy of stuff, and whenever we're quiet, we can get way out there in talking about what we believe and what we think. But don't you think that's some kind of thought of that?
oh, definitely. You know, it's like, and I like sitting in my backyard. Sometimes I take a stroll on the golf course at 10 o'clock at night and just look out into space and think about how close or far the closest thing is and what it would be like to fly fast enough to get there, and you'd have to fly Mach 22. And it'd still take you 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but John, don't you, I know you read about the quantum philosophy where the time folds. And so here are the 2 points, but they fold and they're together. And it's quantum mechanics where it just is what it is. You can't figure out how to get there, just like that little burst. All of a sudden you were there.
Well, yeah, it was, I don't know how to describe that. That's one of those things that you can't go online and have any similar simulated thing, and it's just, you just have to see it, and when you see it, you'll believe it, and the thing that, and I don't like fighter pilots because for one simple reason, I'm jealous. But that's primarily who I associate with. I'm a member of a group called Quiet Birdman. And Quiet Birdman is and I know this sounds kind of egotistical, but it's a very elite group of pilots. And there's only been 40,000 Quiet Birdmen since 1926. And because of a lot of wonderful things, I got selected to be in this group. And so once a month I meet with these guys, and I sit at a table. I always move around every month and just listen to the war stories. And everybody in there, we had several World War II fighter aces. They're all gone now, but now we have 3 aces from Vietnam that flew up north. And one of my really good friends, he was a B-52 pilot, and he flew 32 missions, what they call downtown, is when they flew up to bomb Hanoi. And so we sat around and talked about all this stuff. And it's really kind of fascinating to me that I'm even sitting there, but it's just the way it was. And it's not a big deal. But when I take a guess, they're all sitting there with their chin on the table going, wow, I can't believe I'm hearing this. And of course, when I go, I have to watch myself because my chin will be on the table because I can't believe I'm hearing this. And so I started writing all this stuff down, and I've got a really long list of stories that I've accumulated, and along with my slide collection, and I got about 600 or 700 slides I took in Vietnam, and I got several hours of audio tapes, and I walked around. A lot of people thought I was with, because I was wearing civilian clothes. A lot of people thought I was with NBC or CBS or whoever, and it's like, no, I'm just me. And then of course the military guys are looking, going, who are you? And I just smile. And
So John, what can you tell us about Roswell? Tell us whatever you can tell.
okay, Roswell, we're back to Roswell. Well, one thing I know for sure.
Well, we love ET, so we need to talk about it. We love other dimensional, interdimensional beings.
I,
We love
I
them.
know that.
And we go,
And I have some friends here in town, two friends who have business out there. One of my Masonic brothers just retired from a company that's based here, but they operate out of Area 51. And of course, you know, Masons are pretty thick, and we get together and you know, of course, he wants to hear my stories, and I'm going, man, that's pretty dull compared to what you did. And and then he starts telling me his story, and I'm going, well, mine's pretty dull compared to that. But we've actually discussed that in length, and he goes, anybody that doesn't, or anybody that thinks that the dimension we live in is the only one where there's any kind of life is just totally spastic. Because, you know, all you got to do is get it. Well, we've looked into a massive telescope out there, and it's like, it's almost overwhelming. And the other thing that kind of wears on me about this is all these gung-ho, and I don't want to take a cheap shot at anybody, but, you know, my mother was a I'm not going to tell you her religion, but she was kind of a Pentecostal fundamentalist fanatic, and all those stories they kept coming up with, it's like, you know, for some reason I'm missing something here. How can we be the only thing that exists? And so when I walk out to my golf course on a starless night and get with my friend who has a super telescope, I have a hard time going to sleep. And then when I get out with my clients in Roswell, and I've seen some pretty interesting things there and up in Nevada, at a place called Area 51. And Trish, you know, I have clients there. I just scratch my head, and it's like, you know, I'm so happy to be 77, but I'm really sad that I'm not going to be 477. Because,
well, maybe you will be, because the technology says all we need to do is fix the telomeres and we'll start going backward. And there's a lot of work in progress there.
well, they better.
But tell us what we know, what we can know about Roswell or Area 51. Well, a lot of people saw these little guys walking around giving people chicken McNuggets or something. Tell us something.
Well, you know, that's the next time you come out, we're going to have dinner with one of my film buds. But he's a Roswell specialist. He's shot documentaries out there, and of course, when we get together at the office, we call the IHOP the office. By the time we leave, you know, there's about 10 people sitting around, and they ain't leaving until we leave because they're just sitting there listening to what we're saying. But this guy, man, he really has researched just, he's got photographs that would knock your wheels off. And I don't know what else to say about it, except it's real, they're really there. And he said that if you think about it from a practical standpoint, to have human life, there are certain aspects that you have to have human life. You got to have water, you got to have oxygen, and you know, the list goes on. Well, now, since they have such great technology for looking out into the cosmos, then there's all kinds of planets out there that has all this stuff. It's just getting the old teletype cranked up to talk to them, because, and who knows, you know, they probably don't even want to talk to us. You know, I'm sure they know what's going on around here, and it's like, well, who wants to mess with other humans? They're a bunch of idiots. I'm not including us in that. so, so,
I'm glad you made that clarification because I was going to get upset about it myself.
well,
Well, John, I do have a question since you spent so much time in the Southwest. When we were, Dr. Deborah and I went to see Dr. Trish about 2 months ago now,
Yeah.
and it was the 25th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights. And I think I asked you before, I don't think you saw the Phoenix Lights down in Tucson, did you?
no, I saw him out of Phoenix.
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't know that because I was going to ask you if you knew anything, knowing about the Southwest, if you knew anything about skinwalkers, but I'd rather hear your experience with the Phoenix Lights.
Well, one of my bud that lives up in Mesa, who is the jet engine or ejection seat safety guy, he's a gung-ho airplane dude, and we just hang out together. And so he invited me up to his place, and we were sitting on we sat out on his porch and having an adult beverage and a cigar, and we were sitting there one evening just talking airplane junk and other war stories. And all of a sudden, he goes, "You see what I see?" And I said, "I do." I said, "What is that?" And we were looking out toward the southwest, down on the horizon, and here comes this thing and it was kind of like this. It was very narrow, kind of long, and it had flashing lights on the outside, and then there was a great big light in the middle. And so, we're looking at that going, "What is that?" And so we get he gets his computer out and goes online, and then we got our phones out, and man, people in Phoenix were going nuts because everybody was seeing that. Well, and so it was all being written off as we got an alien presence, and it just came up to us and then went over us, and then that was the end of it. Well, a few months later, I'm having lunch with one of my fighter pilot buddies here in town, and he's been known to be involved in some pretty interesting stuff. So I thought, I'll just ask him. I said, "Do you know anything about that alien presence looking stuff?" He started cracking up, man. He was laughing so hard. He goes, "You heard about it?" And I said, "Man, I saw it." And he goes, "You know what that was?" And I said, don't disappoint me." He said, "You will be." He said, we had a flight of A-10 Warthogs out of DM, or Davis Mountain here. And he said, "We've been out to the bomb range." And he said, over in Yuma. And he said, "So what we were doing is we were flying back to Tucson via Phoenix." And he said, "We just decided what the heck." And they got air traffic control to allow them to get in a formation side by side. And so when they got to the area around Phoenix, which is highly controlled, they said, "You have to turn your landing lights on for all everybody does, so people can see the traffic." And he said, what that was us coming back from the bomb range, and we decided we was going to do this and see what happens, and that's what happened. But even though, what goes on out at the bomb range, there's certain things happens out there that, and I've been a part of it, some of them, and we don't discuss it. But what goes on in Roswell is real, and there's all kinds of evidence that we've been visited. And I think I told Trish, the building that I work in, when I go out there, my client owns a Hangar 84. Have you ever heard of Hangar 84? Well, Hangar 84 is where they brought the bodies in from the crash, and the lunchroom in Hangar 84 was actually the morgue where they stored the bodies of the aliens before they took them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And everybody there talks about that.
Wow.
And so another one of those sitting there eating my cheeseburger going, boy, I can't believe I'm here.
I love it. Well, I know we're
So-
getting close to the end. Do you have any final, what is the question we always ask girls? It's like, any good advice you can give our audience to, from all your years of learning from every experience you've had in your wisdom. Is there any advice you would give our audience that could better their life?
Or maybe from your fishy past.
Well, I like to think I do, because like I told you, I teach and I pass along a lot of stuff, and the reason I'm pretty confident is I get a lot of feedback, but my theory is, first of all, you don't ever take no for an answer. If you're off on to
We agree
Yeah.
with you. We're all three like that.
Yeah, and the other one is don't blow smoke up my pant leg, pal, because I've been there and I know, number one. And number two, if I don't know, I'll find out because I know who to ask.
Yeah,
And,
good one. That is some Roe advice for sure.
and I just look back at my life and go, well, if I had it all to do over again, what would I change? And I used to think, well, let's see, I wouldn't marry my ex-wife. And then I'm going, well, if I didn't marry my ex-wife, I wouldn't have my cool daughters and my cool grandson. So I guess that was okay. Fortunately, it wasn't permanent. And but I think if you want to be successful in life and in your brain, you can't be opinionated, and you can't listen to a particular group a particular group at all. You got to listen to everybody, because everybody has something worthwhile to say. They may tell you something that you don't want to do. Well, at least you've learned that somebody tells you something you don't want to do that you hadn't thought about before. So that would be my guess on what I would recommend. Just hang out with cool people, and because you don't ever get the attitude that, boy, am I cool? Because, man, all you got to do is just look around and you'll run across somebody that's cooler than you are. So, in my
Not
deal,
always, not always.
I'll say that again.
I said not
John,
always.
I think you just met the luckiest person in the world. You finally met her.
Yeah, she's pretty lucky. She's pretty lucky.
Well, let's do something exciting again, and
We're gonna have 2 events in September, but I'm gonna come down soon. And Lynn's birthday is today. Remember Lynn, the photographer?
Oh yeah.
She should be on Clubhouse here when we get over to the other platform.
dimension.
Yeah,
We're
the
going
other
to another
dimension.
dimension.
And then you don't have to have people see you. You can tell us more secrets, because
Mhm.
they won't be able to
Okay.
identify you there.
Well, if anybody ever asks, I'm going to tell them I don't know you guys, and I'm sure they don't know me.
Except for me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's just for people I don't want them to know.
John, I love you so much, and our adventures have only started. They've just begun. And
Yeah.
so, you know, we have a lot of stories, that's for sure, between this group. Like my favorite story about Laura, and it has to do with all of us. This guy, you know, Ron Jones, the guy from NASA who loves you so much. Ron, the first time he met with the Bohemians, he just comes over to her husband and he says, like, who are these people? Who is she? And Jim, her husband, said, I'm not sure, but your life is just about to get really interesting.
Yeah, he said, pull up a chair because things are getting ready to get interesting.
That's what we want. Interesting
And
days
that's the
and
thing.
adventures.
We don't have time to tell everybody all of our stories because we're writing a 300-page book every day, and we just have to get on to the next thing, you know. So
Well, it's always a pleasure to be in y'all's presence, and we got to do this a little more often because, you know, I'm kind of getting up there in the seniority, and I don't have to wait till I meet you guys on the other side. But keep this in mind, when we get on the other side, there's going to be a lot of other people around. And then when they hear us talking, the next thing you know, there's going to be 500 people gathered around just to listen.
and drink tequila.
That's right.
Yeah. And one last thing, you know, I think, you know, you guys know, I know astronauts and some shoe salesmen and so on and so forth. But, you know, the former chief astronaut, and this guy, he was the executive director of NASA, and he also flew the space shuttle 3 times. Plus, he did 50 combat missions in Vietnam. And he's one of my buddies in this special group. Well, he came to town about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he calls me up. And he goes, hey, Little John, and that's my nickname with this crowd. He goes, meet us for lunch. And so we met downtown at this place where Bonnie and Clyde got caught. We were sitting on a patio, and he brought 2 lady astronauts with him. And as it started off as, you know, just chit-chatting, and so one lady astronaut was sitting across to my left, and the other was sitting on the other side in front of her, and Colonel Gregory was sitting across from me. And it started off just some war stories. And this lady looked at me and she goes, tell me some stories. And I went, do what? She goes, I know about your group. And she goes, there's more good stories here than can ever be told. So what's yours? And I said, oh, my story's kind of dull and boring. And Fred goes, shakes his head. He goes, John, don't even go there. And so he goes, what about, and he started naming dates and times where we got together and we did some really interesting stuff. Well, this lady was sitting across the aisle from me, and she's sitting there with her partner, or there's 3 of them. And it started off, they were like this, and pretty soon they were going like this and like this. And the next thing I know, this lady is almost over on my shoulder across the aisle there. And I looked over and I said, are you okay? She goes, oh, I'm sorry. She said, we were just listening to y'all's story. I said, oh, okay. I said, you want us to pay you to listen? And she goes, we have a question. And I said, okay, what's that? She goes, are you an astronaut? And I said, no, I'm not an astronaut. I said, but he is. And she goes, oh my God. She was being really animated, you know. And
all right, well, John, we got to get over to Clubhouse because we
Yeah, we'll continue this story on Clubhouse. This is where, John, we can call you to get you on Clubhouse, but our audience gets on Clubhouse and asks questions of
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
you can just sign off from Zoom, and we'll see you over on Clubhouse where you can walk around your house and drink water because we don't know what you're doing, but we're going to ask you some questions.
Well,
all right, John, I just sent you on text the room. If you click on it, you'll go right into the room. Just get off your computer, only on your phone.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All
Thank
right,
you so much, John. We'll see you on
thank you. It
Clubhouse.
was great.
Bye,
Very
everybody.
good. Happy
Thanks for
contrails.
tuning in.
Happy contrails. See ya.
Happy contrails.